I have to find that sweet spot between experiencing it and performing it, but also not being there where I was. So it's really, I think that's your craft as a performer, not as a songwriter, but as a performer, to find that sweet spot, and that's what I need to work on.
Emily of SULDUSK, thank you so much for your time. People that have no clue what goes on behind the scenes sometimes to set up an interview between somebody in Canada and somebody in Australia can take a little, collaboration, a little coordination, but we're here, and I'm so excited to talk to you. Was really impressed with the album coming out, and I'm just going to go straight there. The album is out.
Yes.
How are you feeling right now? Because it's out for a couple of weeks. You've had some time to see what the response is. If I would have interviewed you a few weeks before the release, would I get a very different Emily?
No, it's I feel good that it's finally out, basically. It's relief, because it's been a long time in the making, and it is great to have it out there and getting the momentum, to get into the next level of things.
Now, your album is another release in what feels like this somewhat global, golden age new wave of both black metal, gaze, folky, what have you. We've seen great releases by Helga last year, Sylvain, your album as well. There's this dark and beautiful sound, but it's not something when we listen to your music that we would automatically maybe just think of like, oh, that's going to be a band from Australia. Like, most people will hear your songs and think that we're talking about, band from northern Scandinavia that has infused Nordic folk music into their sound. Where does this sound come from? Like, is there a larger scene of this kind of atmospheric, black metal shoegaze combo in Australia?
No, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. It's very Aquilus is the only other atmospheric black metal folk infused project,
right?
And we seem to share an audience when we perform live. We've played with them before, but there isn't really much of this. I don't know why it's emerged here from this country. Maybe it's because of my European heritage, and I grew up around folk music, and it's in my DNA, and so whatever music I did was probably going to have some influence there. But yeah, it's not a big thing. I think with SULDUSK, it's just being true to what is inside you, and not really caring too much about what genre it is. And that's why it kind of seems to organically fuse a lot of genres, and they are the ones that I enjoy. So yeah, why not give people some sort of indication about what the style is, because it's not just ethereal, it's not just metal, it's a whole mishmash of
exactly
of flavors.
There's a lot going on, and I mean, yes, there is that atmospheric black metal is there, that folk influence is there, but there's also a ton of modern more influences and touches there. I mean, at times almost djenty even, that we feel in the background. That also means that, like some of the other artists that I mentioned earlier, that you can fit with a lot of different bands. SULDUSK could share a bill with a traditional black metal band, but just as much a progressive rock band. And so, as you just said, like, you know, here in the local scene, there aren't too many people that sound like us. That means that you've played for a lot of different audiences, with a lot of very different bands. How do you see like different audiences react? Because everybody can find an element in your music that they can probably relate to very easily. Do different audiences react to this in the same way to your music, or do you feel like, oh, well, there's certain crowds that take a different approach?
I think that the crowds that we've played to, that we've supported, bands like Catatonia, Wolves in the Throne Room. There's been a lot of Bellacore, who are like a big Aussie band, but are very successful overseas. They've got a very European flavour to their metal. Those are the bands we seem to connect a lot more effectively with. I think we've played with bands that are more noise metal and more unemotional kind of metal, more hardcore, that sort of style, which is fantastic, but it's not our audience. I think if you're looking for emotional connectivity, then it's more of a SULDUSK crowd. Other more noise metal, more I don't know. So I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, that's really not our scene. But if you're looking for more of a more atmospheric and some emotionality, then it's probably for you. So that's how I would say. It works. And I've noticed just observing from playing.
You say some emotional, like this is it feels like an extremely emotional, but also a very vulnerable record, where you touch on a lot of different things, different emotions. Some songs feel a little bit more macro, some feel very introspective, but SULDUSK is not just yourself. This is a band. There's multiple people involved, but we do see obviously we see you front and center. You are more than just the face of the band. We see you in artwork as well. And you mentioned, well, if you listen, you get a glimpse of all that's inside of me and my upbringing. So help me understand, where does Emily stop and SULDUSK begin, and vice versa?
I think with this album, the musicians have sort of helped me elevate the vision and perform in their own right in the space that they've been given. But the compositions have been myself. Shane has been one of the main composers for this. So there's a lot of his own style, and Josh Taylor, who's the other guitarist. So there's 3 guitarists in this band now. So it's like there's a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of their personalities and their experiences and their emotions in the compositions as well. I think that we're all coming from the same pond, from the same place, and there was a big overlap. They've both got a technical death metal background, so they've got that level of musicianship and depth as well that has so now it's like the music itself. There's a fusion towards a creative goal, and I think the SULDUSK, the first album, kind of set the tone for the next album to build on what had happened in the first album, which was more gentle introduction. I think with this album, I wanted to go myself. I wanted to go more hectic. I wanted to go explore more ambient, but at the same time more extreme emotions as well. And having that, it's such a thrown around word, the juxtaposition, between being calmed and soothed and then being confronted. It creates an interesting contrast and a good dynamic. It wasn't I'm going to do this now. It just came out that way. But when we were putting the songs together, it was nice to provide a bit of breath between the more chaotic songs and give people a chance, the listener experiencing it, to have a moment of calm and then go back into the war zone again.
Yeah. When you take a step back, the evolution for SULDUSK from your project to now a true band, and you were already talking about like, oh, I see this only, continue even more strongly. Like, does that surprise you, that you've let people in this way?
They still know I'm the dictator, so I'm very benevolent. I'm very kind, but I do make the.
That's what every dictator says.
I know. I'm very kind. I'm for a fascist. No, yeah. I definitely consult everyone, and I try and get a common sort of decision making. But the creative direction and yes, being the front person and the project leader, and now becoming a band leader, it's still it's giving a direction. But the beauty of this now, the stage that this project is at, is being able to really outsource the creative components to others instead of sitting there and composing every aspect, and everyone brings their strengths and their personalities, and creatively on stage it's just they're such good musicians, they're such elevated musicians that it elevates me when I'm on stage with them. And so it's that experience that it's great to be, a one-person project, but you can't perform live on stage unless everybody else is sampled in. So I don't want to be sampling everybody in. I want to have real people connecting, making mistakes and not hitting it perfectly, and just being human, because the way we are going that's going to be something that AI can't substitute, is real transmuting of sound through a person, creating it rather than virtually.
Question I want to ask you, and I've asked this question to multiple artists that allow themselves to be vulnerable in their music, and I know that lyrics can be interpreted a million ways and probably a million times differently than you wrote them, but some of these songs do feel, like I said earlier, to be quite introspective and more emotional. You are also, you're quite literally very open also on the artwork and what have you. When songs channel your own emotions, and you were very vulnerable to write these songs, how hard is that playing these songs live? Because I get very different answers from different artists. Some people will tell me every time I perform that song about my own hurt, it helps me a little bit, and other people say every time I do it, I crash after I perform it, because it brings all the negativity back. What's that like for you?
I love that you've asked this question, because I was just saying to a couple of the people in the band that we're preparing a big launch show, and we're going through the whole album, and Sphera, the song, is, for me, it's a hard one when it gets to a very certain point where it's hard. It's going to be hard, because, and I have to almost detach a little bit, because I'm trying to I've been practicing how to execute it, because if it's something we're going to be needing to perform, so I need to deal with it. And so I have to sort of detach and not be in it, not re-experience it, get re-triggered by that moment where it's very truthful and very painful, but also cathartic. So I have to find that sweet spot between experiencing it and performing it, but also not being there where I was. So it's really, I think that's your craft as a performer, not as a songwriter, but as a performer, to find that sweet spot, and that's what I need to work on. So yeah, that's the challenge, and it's really great question. But yeah, it is. This album, I didn't really want to go too much into my, everyone. I mean, you're a human. If you're a human, you suffer. It's just the way it is. There's no escape. and so to create something that's authentic, you have to sometimes go there. And I think with this album, I really had to push myself a little bit to be more connected to that part of my life experience, rather than run away from it and just sing beautifully. And it's all out at the back here. I had to be more, like you said, it was more, had to be more intimate in some ways.
It'll be an even weirder trip when then, as you start to play this song more and more, that song and other songs, your fans will have their own meaning of that song and their own interpretation, and they will share that with you. And some of them might go like, "Oh, that song, it spoke to me for this and this, and it helps me with that," and that'll be a complete mindfuck for you. Like, have you already seen that, where people share with you like what a song means to them, and it could not be further from what you wrote about?
I haven't experienced that. It's been usually aligned with the feeling. One of the best things I ever feedback was with someone who connected with a song. They would play a song, and they would be thinking of someone that had passed away, and they felt that person's presence. When they felt the song, they were flooded with it, positive emotion and sentimental and nostalgic feelings, and that's aligned, I think, with the self-reflective aspect of the songs and the feelings in the songs. So it wasn't too far, or I haven't been mind blown yet. I'm sure. I mean, that's the beauty of lyrics that are not too I don't really want to be talking about, it was even hard to, in some sections where I'm talking about I and you, or I don't really like using those pronouns, because I just think I don't want to be too directive and say this is what the song's about. It's more about creating a feeling. And
I'll use this a bit of a segue, because you're right. You can infuse a metaphor into your lyrics, and just to make a ridiculous 180 turn, for many bands that have a folk or a shoegaze or a post or atmospheric influence, nature is always important, it seems, and relation with nature. And in your case specifically, you seem to like birds specifically. In a lot of photography that you share, we see feathers or birds and so on. So what metaphor do they how important or why are birds so important to you?
I have no idea, but I'll try and answer this now. I'll try and I think birds. I think straight away what comes to me is their frequencies. I find them fascinating, I find their songs fascinating. We have some incredible birds here, and we have a friend who's a bird watcher. So if I hear a particular bird cry, and there's one just at the start of Crowns of Vespa, which is a currawong. It's an Australian bird.
Okay.
And they have a very sad cry around sunset. It's very nostalgic, very drony frequencies, and it's about, I think for me, I hear that and it evokes an emotion in me of that sadness or melancholy, and there's no instrument. It's a bird. It's nature. That's nature's instrument there. That's nature's singer. That's nature's vocals out there. And I think, yeah, my ears seem to attune to the frequencies of nature, and even the wind. When I used to hate the wind. I hate walking in the wind, and then I spoke to my very my very wise uncle in Greece, whose name is Sophocles. He's a philosopher. He's incredible. That's his actual name. Yeah. And he said to me, he said, the wind is, how can you not love the wind? The wind brings power, and it brings, it creates energy, and I started to listen to the wind and the trees when it was windy, and how they would talk, and there's some sort of attunement there to the sounds of nature that are intriguing to me. So I think that I'm not sure why, but that's what it is.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think neither of us were truly expecting to be talking about windbirds and trees at the start of this conversation, but here we are.
Or my uncle.
Or your uncle, which, to be honest,
bless him.
I kind of feel like it would have been even more funny if he was a plumber with that name instead of a philosopher. But anyways, you are, the year is still young. This beautiful album is out. We want to see you promote that. Now, obviously, you are very far away from me, so I'm not just going to assume that next week there's going to be shows announced in Canada and the US. But for the remainder of this year, what can we keep our eyes open for?
Well, we have that upcoming launch here in Melbourne on May the 10th. It's going to be exciting to perform the whole album for a lot of people here in Melbourne that we've never headlined. We've always done international supports or local supports, but this one it's our show. So there's that, and then we have a festival in Perth later in the year. So we'll be flying around this country.
Yeah.
And we're also speaking to someone about heading to Europe as soon as possible. So that's the plan. And then based on how that all goes, hopefully coming to northern US, Canada would be amazing. But that's we're hoping.
Right.
But having said that, we're halfway through writing the third album. So I'm happy to just keep writing, and when opportunities come, to seize those opportunities and have even more of a repertoire to draw on, so that we can really enjoy what we're playing. So that's pretty much the plan.
Awesome. Well, Emily, I wish you and the entire band all the best with that really cool show, and I hope obviously that a lot of that will be recorded, so we'll see a lot of content from that show appear overseas. Thank you so much for your time today. I genuinely appreciate it. It was so much fun talking to you about this beautiful new album.
Likewise.
And I really hope to see you on a stage very soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.